Hey, I think my video's blocked, but that's okay. Okay, start my video. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks so much for taking your time today to be with us with the Sacramento Summit, our third annual and our first virtual event of the year, but I don't think it'll be our last going forward. The topic today is going to be advocating virtually. And before we start, I wanted to say that, well, first, my name is Kenji Haroutunian. I am a consultant in the outdoor industry. I'm the director of the Big Gear Show. I'm a board director with CORP and also with the Access Fund in my 9th year. So before we start and introduce the other panelists, I wanted to hear from you all who are attending this webinar to let us know a little bit where you're coming from. We have a 3-question poll that we wanted to put to you that has to do with who you'll be advocating on behalf of, your history and participation, and what you're most interested to learn about. So go ahead and fill that out now. We'll wait a few minutes and or maybe 1 minute, and then we'll jump in. As you're filling this out, this will be a panel discussion about virtual advocacy, and will feature the Sierra Business Council, Surfrider Foundation, the Outdoor Alliance, and American Whitewater. All right, it seems like we're getting some results. Hopefully you all can see this. It looks like we have quite a strong organizational presence with 79% attending this that are representing organizations, plenty of experience in in-person lobbying, and pretty even mix coming down on the third question about what we're trying to do with learning and what you're going to take away from this panel discussion. So thanks a lot for filling that out. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panel now, and then we'll get into the content of today's presentation. First off, again, my name is Kenji Haroutunian. I'm here as a board member of the California Outdoor Recreation Partnership, and I'm using this fancy virtual background to hide my incredibly cluttered bookshelf behind me. So, but I wanted to first start off with Sierra Business Council's Brittany. Why don't you introduce yourself, Brittany, and then hand it over to Jennifer.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. As Kenji said, my name is Brittany Benesi. I'm the Government and Community Affairs Director for Sierra Business Council, and I am joining you all today from the beautiful ancestral lands of the Washoe people. Pass it off to Jennifer.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Savage with Surfrider Foundation. I am coming to you from the ancestral homes and current homes of the Wiyot tribe up here in Humboldt County. And I'll hand it over to Tania.
Hey everyone, I'm Tania Lown-Hecht. I'm the Communications Director for Outdoor Alliance. We are a coalition of 10 membership groups, including Surfrider and American Whitewater. Our office is based in DC, but I relocated to be with family this year in Sonoma County in California, where you can see my non-virtual background, my parents' garage. And we are on the land of the Kashaya tribe, who were the first inhabitants in the area. They were moved inland 150 years ago and recently returned to the coast, and they continue to steward land just south of here. Passing it off to Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa Simpson. I'm the California Stewardship Director for American Whitewater. We advocate to protect, restore, and enhance opportunities for enjoyment of the whitewater resources across the nation. And I am joining you from the Nishanan homelands in Gold River.
Great, thanks to all of you for that. And I think Teresa wins the Virtual Background Award for the panel. Nicely done.
Only because, like you, I have a bunch of bikes behind me in the office.
Well, so let's get into this. I know we are tight on time, and we want to deliver an action-packed, or at least a tips and technique-filled presentation for the audience today to take away around the concept of virtual advocacy. So before we dive into the methods and the tips and techniques that we want to share, and maybe some of the wins that you all have had in virtual advocacy, let's define what we're talking about first, I think. So maybe Tania, you could just start us out with how you define advocacy in a general sense when it comes to what we're doing here.
Sure. I think of advocacy as about influencing policy, but also about influencing public opinion, since so much of that is what shapes policy is public opinion. And in a broader sense, advocacy is the work of making social change, which I think all of us here want to do. And we're thinking about what are the techniques you can use to make that social change.
Thanks, Tania. And Brittany, with the Sierra Business Council, do you have something to add on that regarding advocacy in general?
Well, I think what we've seen today really illustrates what advocacy is, right? It's about inspiring action. And I think today has been filled with a lot of inspiration. Specifically, advocacy shows up for us in inspiring legislative action around a core issue, organizing and engaging and building coalitions. And I think today has really showcased that in a lot of ways so far.
Great point. Great point. Thanks for that. So I think we can all get around the idea of virtual at this point. So let's shift gears a bit and dig into the virtual side of advocacy. It's obvious that 2020 has been a different year for advocacy, and our industry, the outdoor industry, and the world as a whole has shifted to virtual across all industries, and I'm an events person, so certainly across all events. So let's clarify sort of the difference between advocating virtually versus not virtually or in person. Tania, you have some experience in this. Which tools and methods do you use at Outdoor Alliance to achieve these goals virtually?
Yeah, so first we do in-person advocacy as well as digital advocacy. Our office is based in DC, so we meet with lawmakers there regularly, folks from land management agencies and other decision makers. But we're also a really small team. There's just 6 of us. When I started, it was just 3 of us. So a lot of my job in communications is to make our presence look a lot bigger than we are. I'm like the man behind the curtain. So I relied on digital strategies for years to make us look and feel more powerful, and to be able to have a much greater impact than we could get from the traditional in-person advocacy, where maybe you're tabling or you're having one-on-one face-to-face meetings. Those are still incredibly important, but you can get a lot of bang for your buck by doing things virtually. So that's kind of in our toolkit from the beginning. So that's been one nice thing about this current moment, is not feeling like we have to reinvent our whole toolkit. So I guess some of the tools that I'd say are the most important, the first is our CRM, the Constituent Relationship Manager, Customer Relationship Management tool. We use EveryAction, which has a really great suite of tools that you can use so that our email list can very easily write letters to their representatives, their senators, to their state legislators, governors, all the way down to adding targets like someone at the Forest Service or your local mayor or something like that. And that has made it really easy for us to get messages out to a really broad audience and make it really easy for people to do outreach to their members of Congress. So they know if they get an email from us that says, this is really important, we need your voice with your member of Congress right now, that they can just take 2 minutes to read, understand, and send a letter to their elected officials. So that has been a really big, actual tool that we use every single day in our work to help make things happen. And a big part of my job is also just generating the grassroots or public communications and outreach that goes hand in hand with one-on-one phone calls or previously one-on-one meetings that we'd have. So a big thing that I do is if our policy director talks to an office and that office says, this idea that you have, it sounds great, we want to pass this bill, but our boss really needs to feel like there's good public support around it. Then my job is to help drum up that public support by making sure there's tons of emails floating into that office, people are making phone calls, that local recreation leaders are calling the staffers, and making it look and feel, making the legislator know that people are really supportive of something, making it look and feel as if there's a huge wave of public support. So that's one of the big things that I do. I'm happy to talk more, but
yeah,
that's a start.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think, we're hoping to unveil some of the tools, and the CRM is a big one that, just about every organization, tiny to huge, has, and how they utilize it, how they build it, tap into it, and maintain it is a big important one. And I feel like Outdoor Alliance has done an excellent job of making it easy for us to advocate through you, and kind of a plug and play process that allows us to reach our lawmakers locally as well as statewide and nationwide. So digging into that a little bit deeper, how do you use these tools to garner momentum in a particular campaign? So why don't we just stick with you, Tania, and then we'll go around and hear from others too.
Yeah, sure. So I think the basics of any kind of big campaign is you're trying to figure out what outcome you want, who the target is, like who has the power to make a decision or make a change, who the right messengers are to reach that particular target, and then what's the right medium for that message. So there's lots of different examples of how to do this. One sort of recent example that you may have heard of, it's not California based, but I do have some other California examples, but you may have heard of what happened in Slick Rock outside Moab, Utah. The BLM was proposing to do a big lease sale that was on this amazing mountain biking trail in Sand Flats, which is a campground. And there's a bunch of recreation. There's some climbing, there's a little bit of paddling, but mainly a ton of really good mountain biking right there. So the BLM was planning to do this lease sale in this place where there's great trails. And so when we were trying to figure out what to do, my first question was, well, who has the power here? Like, who can make a change or make a decision about the lease sale? And it turns out that with a lot of these lease sales, like some of the local offices actually have a lot of control. They can't necessarily call it off, but they can, call up to their superiors and say, please call this off. So I started collecting the emails from the Moab office, BLM, and in the offices in DC, though they are sometimes harder to get a hold of. So I got a bunch of emails from the Utah office, they're all online, and from Department of Interior. So we knew that we were gonna, reach all of the important people. And then I emailed everyone on our email list in Utah, plus anyone who had already taken action on some Moab issues before. And I said, hey, here's what's going on. Here's this lease sale. Can you please write to these folks and say to pull these parcels from the sale? So they did. It wasn't that many people, probably 600 to 800 people that wrote emails. But if you're like the Moab BLM office and you're getting 600 emails to your email account, which is listed online, you're eager to make change. So within 24 hours, we had a press release from the Utah BLM office that says, we've heard the recreation community loud and clear. Mountain biking is so important to us. We're pulling these parcels from the upcoming lease sale. So that was a huge win. And it didn't take that many people on an email list or really even that many messages overall, but it's figuring out who's the right target and who are going to be the best messengers to that target. And that works on a much broader scale as well.
Awesome. That's super great insight, Tania, on how you guys did that. And I keep hearing this repeat theme of sort of similar to when you encounter a bear, try to look large, right? Hold your bike over your head.
Oh, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
And using
look large
all the
and
tools.
Annoy people. Those are my mottos.
Yeah, well, yeah, and annoy them virtually if you can't annoy them in person.
Yeah, exactly.
That's cool. Thank you. Looking at, we've lost a lot of the potential for in-person impact, which is, we're human beings, we are social creatures, we respond to in-person body language and conversation and relationship building. It's really the way it's going to be done. Given that we don't have that, how are we going to address this? Are there ways? I think Jen Savage over at Surfrider, could you talk about the different ways that that you've taken on this challenge of virtual?
Sure, thanks, Kenji. And I want to mention for folks who aren't familiar with Surfrider, in case anyone isn't, that we are a nonprofit dedicated to the protection and enjoyment, big emphasis on enjoyment, of the world's ocean, beaches, and waves through a powerful activist network. And that part has really been affected by going virtual, because so much of our power does come from our grassroots volunteers. So we have 20 chapters in California, and I'm the California policy manager, so I assist them in different capacities and different issues. But we have sort of the opposite of what Tania was saying. Like, we have so much strength in numbers, and it's because people come together, right? People come together, they see a problem at their local surf break, or they see a lot of trash on the beach and they want to do something about it. And that, over the 35 years, 36 years that Surfrider has been around, has led to this incredibly effective way of changing policy. But you take away that in person, and now, like, our chapters can't get together in person. They don't have that energy. Beach cleanups have to be, solo or with your quarantine pod. And we had to cancel our annual Ocean Day event at Sacramento, which would have been in March. It was too quick to transition to virtual. Like, this is great. If we'd had more lead time, maybe we could have done that. I imagine it'll look like this for 2021. But it was really a big change. And fortunately, it's, we are used, like a lot of nonprofits, to reacting to unforeseen challenges, and very quickly we're able to work with our chapters to help them figure out different ways to engage. And even though that is not directly meeting with policymakers, for us it's such an important part of it, because we need people to stay engaged. We need people to have a place to put their passion, to continue to care about things like plastic pollution when the state is burning down, these things that aren't going away despite the, sort of more immediate crises that we're all dealing with, from COVID to the wildfires to the economy. And so we have been really effective at having virtual events, of providing lots and lots of social media toolkits that are fun and interesting and well done. I think, having engaging materials is so critical. And so what that has meant, that as the legislative session, such as it was, went on, we were able to keep our volunteers really committed to the bills that we were working on. And there was lots of outpour to the legislators about, what their constituents wanted them to do. And so in that realm, we've been able to stay effective. On the other side, the political reality, anyone who works in politics knows that, the public meetings are only half the game, right? You have to build those relationships, and it's a lot easier to do that in person over a beer than on Zoom, especially if you don't have an existing relationship. So I think for all of us who are trying to be effective politically, that's going to be one of the interesting challenges going forward.
Yeah, good point. The long-term game of relationship development versus kind of the more tactical advocacy check marks like social media or email campaigns. And
right, it's the I feel like it's behind the scenes work that has really suffered.
Yeah, that's and you've got a long history of that, and that's an important piece to keep in mind as we look forward. Maybe in person will come back pretty soon, but these virtual elements, in my view, especially in my side of the work on events, live events, is definitely a thing here to stay, I think, is what I'd say. Brittany, you have some experience. Oh, by the way, thanks, Jen. And Brittany's experience with Sierra Business Council with approaches to advocacy. Can you elaborate a bit on your angle here, Brittany?
Absolutely. So I relate a lot to a lot of what Jen has said. The takeaway of the human element was definitely a huge item that we had to pivot on this year. Sierra Business Council is a triple bottom line organization, which means we advocate on items that serve the community, the economy, and the environment simultaneously, with a focus on the Sierra Nevada region. So our plan that allows for a wide breadth of policy areas, but we had a very specific plan for 2020, which was around getting a meaningful climate bond on the November 2020 ballot and getting that passed, which I think we've heard again and again today was a lot of people's goals for the year. And in early March, we were feeling pretty good about our chances there. And then with the major shifts and understandable shifts that were required because of the pandemic, we really had to shift our strategy and determine where we were going to direct some of that time and resource that would have otherwise been focused on the climate bond, which by the governor's May revise was looking a little less shiny of an opportunity than it was in March. And so we did that in two major ways. We focused in on identifying smaller bills with less of an economic impact that pulled some of the priorities that we appreciated in the climate bond, reaching out to those legislators for virtual meetings and email correspondence, and seeing where we could offer any areas of expertise from a Sierra Nevada perspective. As Assemblymember Kalra mentioned earlier, they were really welcoming of that expertise in this session in particular. And so we worked with legislators and we organized our coalitions to focus our energy on advancing some of those smaller bills that had been prioritized, bills around regional climate adaptation planning, wildfire mitigation, a number of other bills, Regions Rise Grant Program, which would have allowed the Sierra and some of California's outdoor recreation areas to focus in on providing grants that would have elevated the outdoor recreation economy, and obviously AB 3030 as well. We focused in on those, utilized a lot of social media and electronic digital letter writing campaigns. And while not all of those ended up passing the finish line in the end, this really was a crazy legislative session. We did succeed in building some of those relationships at a time when that was really difficult. We saw some of the goals that we had prioritized for 2020 advance, moving the needle even if ever so slowly. And we kept our coalitions engaged while laying the groundwork for the importance of these issues in a coming legislative session. And to that point, the other way that we really pivoted our focus on the climate bond was in shifting the messaging and our strategy for a long game, looking forward to how we can lay the groundwork now and keep the momentum that we had in March going for a 2021-22 legislative session while staying prepared in case any last minute opportunities did arise, as I'm sure many of you know, they did at the very end there for wildfire. Unfortunately, weren't able to get that across the finish line. But I think it really spoke to the importance and the ability of smaller organizations. We may be able to use virtual tools to make ourselves look big as a bear, but we're small enough to be nimble and to really pivot on a dime while playing the long game, which provides for a lot of optimism heading into the next session.
Yeah, much appreciated. The optimism of kind of latent demand for some of our outdoor recreation and plus conservation initiatives that have been sort of overtopped by the pandemic. So good for you, Brittany. And it's interesting, Tania coming from the national scope and Jen at Surfrider, pretty much statewide and also nationwide. The Sierra Business Council is kind of regionally focused, and then American Whitewater is also a national organization, but probably has the most interesting local story that is similar to what we saw in Moab, but in the world of water conservation and recreation. So thanks, Brittany, for that. And Theresa, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with that local advocacy?
Well, just wanted to let folks know that if you're trying to get into advocacy or build your constituency for advocacy, local engagement is really where the rubber meets the ground. advocacy and the relationships you build at the local level can be brought to the state and federal level. And the first thing you do is you build trust by being aware of the local issues. And one of the issues that came up just this last April was that El Dorado Irrigation District wanted to change some diversion points to their water permit. Unfortunately, these diversion points were going to affect 50 miles of recreation on the South Fork American River. And we heard earlier Secretary Crowfoot mentioning tubing on the American River. So the impact of this was pretty wide. So one of the first things that I did is I turned to our local partners that we have here. We have Friends of the River. We have California Sport Fishing Protection Alliance. We also had a local American River Recreation Association. And we put our heads together to try and figure out, first of all, what was EID proposing and how we could be a part of this proposal and directing the direction that they went. And the first thing that I did is I worked with Friends of the River. One of our two big things is being able to kind of disseminate the information so that people understand in a short paragraph what is really at stake. And we worked on a communication piece that we put out with every action. Tania had mentioned that piece, and I got to tell you that it's a great platform because people want to take action, they don't have the time. So when you are able to disseminate the information, get it to them that they can understand and take action, and all they have to do is send in an email, they most certainly will do it, and especially if it's an issue that is important to everyone. And in this case, we had 30 days to get comments to El Dorado Irrigation District before they, on their proposal to change their permit. And within that period, we were able to generate over 1,000 comments from the local community, all basically bringing up that the South Fork American River is pretty much a gem of recreation. It is known nationally. It is the most commercially used river in California, and any impacts to it needs to be studied. So basically, backed with that overwhelming response, we were able to send folks from our coalition who had they were the expert information experts on the project, and they sat down with EID staff and board. And because of the overwhelming response, they were able to convince them to remove the diversion point proposal from their request for a change of their permit until that they can do a hydrology study. And in making this decision, EID board members and the staff acknowledged that the recreation stakeholders were the key group that made them think twice about where they were going.
And you were able to make that happen within 30 days. That's
30 days.
That's amazing. So yeah, with 1,000 comments, that's got to be, you got to hang your hat on a good virtual strategy there. Well, thanks for that, Teresa. We want to move into talking about not just the tools of advocacy, but some of the wins that might inspire some of our listeners or attendees today to their own successes. So I want to talk a little bit about the wins that we've been able to experience at the various levels, nationally, regionally, locally. And so I want to turn to Tania at the national level. And can you, I think you have a couple of examples to share, some sizable wins. I think if anyone was listening to Adam earlier in the beginning of today's summit, you might have heard a little bit about one of these. So go ahead, Tania, let us know about what Outdoor Alliance, what kind of wins did you have this year?
Yeah, so this has actually been like an amazing year for our policy work, despite everything else being really, really challenging. The obvious biggest example is the Great American Outdoors Act, which will be billions in funding for public lands, parks, trails, on the local level all the way up to the federal level. So it's really great news. And this was obviously a really long-term effort, tons and tons of partners over many years. I know people who have been working on the Land and Water Conservation Fund in particular their entire careers. Like everyone has a story about it. But one of the things that happened recently, and I won't claim it just as Outdoor Alliance's success, but we certainly played a part in it, which is a big reason why the Great American Outdoors Act passed is because two senators in Montana and Colorado feel a lot of pressure to deliver a big recreation and public lands win in order for their campaigns to go well this fall. And so they, have been applying pressure in the Senate so much that Trump tweeted in March that he wanted to see a conservation bill on his desk that he could sign with these great senators leading the way. So that speaks to, a huge effort over many years of making outdoor recreation issues bipartisan and popular and a winning issue. And as this bill, got put together somewhat hastily and started to get passed, there was a lot of pressure that we had to put on them to make sure that they kept moving things along. So the Great American Outdoors Act came up just at the same time that Congress is also trying to pass emergency funding bills and the CARE Act and a lot of things that are really, really big priority as well. And we just kept reaching out to people and saying, please write your lawmakers, keep this top of mind. Here's how outdoor recreation can be part of economic recovery. And people are getting out more and they need more places to play. So building it back into the current moment. I think we had 60,000 letters go out in just a few months to members of Congress, and they got it passed. So this was obviously like the biggest and most recent win. One smaller thing that we're working on right now that you might not have heard of, but is really relevant for California is that we've been working on a number of bills. Right now they're packaged as the Protecting America's Wilderness Act, but they include several protective designations in California. There's a couple in Colorado. And the House is working to get these attached to the National Defense Authorization Act. So that's like a big must-pass funding bill on the federal level. And these protective designations are ones that the outdoor community in particular has just been working on for years and helping to create to begin with. And getting them into this must-pass bill is a really difficult thing. So one of the things that we did recently as the House and Senate were debating what versions to use is we reached out to our list and said, hey, here's what's going on. We have a chance to pass these amazing protective designations, but we really need like every Democrat on board, every Republican we can grab on board. Please write your legislators and let them know. And we did that, sent 1,600 messages. All the Democrats voted in favor of it in the House, which is just what we needed. And that's so crucial because lawmakers want to know what their constituents are thinking. And what we're doing is just helping bring those voices to their offices so that they know what people think. And so those bills got attached to the House version of the NDAA, and we're hoping that they'll end up in the final package as well.
Awesome. That's great. So is that Protecting America's Wilderness Act?
Yeah, so it's that. There's a couple other things in there too. So like the Grand Canyon Centennial Protection Act was also added on in the CORP Act in Colorado. Wild Olympics is also part of that Protecting America's Wilderness Act that American Whitewater has, Tom O'Keefe has, single-handedly forced forward. So that, it's a really good example of having digital advocacy back up in-person advocacy, that you need digital advocacy to bring grassroots voices to decision makers, to help them understand what the community thinks and to help them educate them on what the outdoor community wants.
And I will just add what American Whitewater did during the GAOA and as well as the Pacific Northwest bills is we really targeted the legislatures that hadn't signed on to sponsor the bills. We found where they were at, and I was able to go to our affiliate clubs, paneling clubs, and again, through every action, we were able to target them.
So virtual stalking is one of the things we really want to encourage here.
Oh yeah. And
when it comes to lawmakers anyway.
American Whitewater is also really good at Twitter and thinking about how to use Twitter as a really key tool. It really depends on the lawmakers, but a lot of them might not be looking at a ton of constituent email, but will be checking their Twitter feed and seeing what their constituents are asking of them. And AW does an especially fantastic job of making sure they're tagging lawmakers on Twitter so that they're hearing things from multiple different angles.
Tagging and hashtagging, these are really important virtual tools these days, right?
Yeah, I would say that, just to build on that, the idea is that, especially if you have a really tough thing you're trying to get done, is that everywhere that legislator goes, they are being reminded of the thing that you want done. So whether it's on Twitter, whether it's emails they're getting, whether it's phone calls to constituents' office, whether it's phone calls, from you to them directly, if you have that relationship, it's so critical so that they all back each other up, because you might have a really good meeting with a lawmaker and think, oh, they're totally into what I'm doing. But if they don't hear anything anywhere else, and maybe they're getting pressured to not do the thing you want them to do, then your job is a lot harder. But if you have a meeting with them and then they hear from their district staff, oh my gosh, we had 100 phone calls today and I have 200 emails and et cetera, this, then it's like, oh, people really do care about this. And it's so important to utilize all of the different tools that we have to apply that. We talked about the definition of advocacy, and there's that very concrete, definitive definition, but we also think of it, and this is somebody's quote, I'm stealing it, I would attribute it, but I cannot remember who said it first, but it's constant pressure endlessly applied. Good
one. Constant pressure endlessly applied. Well, that reminds me of Prop 68, which was a big movement in California that got across the finish line a few years ago now, or almost 2 years ago. Sierra Business Council was a key part of that. Brittany, can you tell us a little bit about your experience driving that campaign?
Absolutely. So Prop 68, which we heard a little bit about in the previous panel, was really a headwaters moment for the Sierra Nevada. It was a historic amount of funding directed to a region that had historically been underfunded in natural resource funding measures, largely because we don't have a very large voter base, and our voter base doesn't, always turn out for the leaders of our natural resource focus areas. So it was really important that we show that there are allies in the region who are not only going to support their policy making, but who deserve a seat at the table, and who are experts in the environmental, natural resource, outdoor recreation issues that Proposition 68 focused on. So we participated with a statewide task force and led with partners at Placer Land Trust, a Sierra task force, which, California is a huge state. The Sierra Nevada is a huge region within that huge state. So utilizing virtual advocacy tools, like social media for campaigning, meeting and video conferencing when we couldn't all be together, was something that we were definitely implementing back in 2018. And participating, finding the legislators on their social media accounts and holding Twitter parties in which everybody would come together and get, a hashtag trending, was a real way to show that the Sierra Nevada was behind this effort. And that we had deserved a seat at the table, and that we had something to provide to the effort. That definitely went a long way in elevating the statewide voice. So while Proposition 68 succeeded in more counties than natural resource bonds had historically done in our region, I think that the participation in the statewide task force also helped elevate the campaign throughout the rest of the state and showcased folks who recreate in the region that their local governments who endorsed it, op-eds that were in those papers, it just kind of elevated the entire campaign. to the next level. And so it earned us a seat at the table in things like the climate resilience bond that we hope to see come out in the next couple of years. And it just showcases that that you can come together across a wide swath of land to elevate the issues and elevate your voices, utilizing digital advocacy tools.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your hard work on Prop 68. Super important, and it's going to be unfolding certainly over the next 5 to 10 years, and that platform, and is going to beget other complementary bills into the future as we hope. This idea of consistent pressure endlessly applied, in a virtual setting is a little bit tougher than the sit down and be in person. Jen, can I come back to you, and you can talk a little bit about how these virtual meetings with staff and lawmakers in Sacramento, like how do you make those work?
Yeah, part of it is, I think, having, a basic grasp of effective phone calls, or now, Zooms. We've had some interesting moments where we've set up Zooms because we're trying to do the face-to-face thing, and then the staffers decide to just call in. So so we're all looking at each other, but they're not actually seeing us and we're not seeing them. So, just trying to develop sort of the technical and social skill set, like any kind of social media or something, to be able to manage and run calls effectively. I want to give huge props to Outdoor Alliance, because everyone I've worked with there has been so good at that. So I've, stealing and learning from their ideas. And then the other part is trying to do things more regularly. So, maybe I would go into a particular legislator's office or go to Sacramento to visit multiple legislators 3 or 4 times a year to talk about different bills and different points in the session. Now I can't do that, so it's harder to maintain that. But I might have like a monthly call with certain key legislators and their staff, so that we can keep updated on what they're doing. They can keep us updated on what they need from us. Like if they need us to target, this guy or this, assemblywoman or whoever to help get their bills passed. And so you have a lot more phone calls to make up for the in-person meetings, but that's the way to do it. Is I think you just have to shift how you relate to people. When I first started dating the man that I've been married to forever now, we did not have cell phones, and we had a long distance relationship, and I had to just go to the payphone in the dorm and spend 2 hours every night to talk to him, and that's just how it worked. I didn't get to see him all the time, but here we are, right? So it's just a different kind of relationship, but you just got to keep at it.
Well, that's such an important tip, is to iterate, not be afraid to start, and you learn every time you do it. You get better and better, and it's not bad to steal good ideas from your network, right? From your Outdoor Alliance network partners or others that are also doing this, iterating this learning process. So thanks for that, Jennifer. And I think we already talked a little bit about American Whitewater's local success, but Teresa, do you want to add anything else in this sort of winning the game of virtual advocacy?
Well, I think, we've talked about a lot of the differences, but I think it really comes down again to building and keeping those relationships. So I think one of the big things, especially right now in the pandemic, is I've been trying to make it a point to get in touch with the folks that I haven't talked to in a while. And I think it's just, granted, normally I would go down and see them, but a phone call is still effective. Get on the phone. It doesn't always have to be a Zoom in person. It just is, hey, I'm getting in touch with you. And then they remember, what it is that is important to them in terms of a relationship.
Right. Kind of the on all fronts: digital, email, phone call. Yeah, everyone has their different favorite social media. So some will be checking Twitter while others are locked onto Instagram or some other thing. So you've got to find, just like in any relationship development, find what works for that person or that key lawmaker or their staff, really. Great. Well, that's really helpful. I want to pivot now and take us, we're kind of getting toward the end, and I want to leave enough room for questions for the panel here. So let's see, got a few questions there, and let's see, I've got this Q&A too. So, all right. So first question is from one of our members, and she's asking, what are the most important tools in advocating virtually? We've talked about a lot of different types of tools. Is it rallying constituents versus social media, or attending Zoom hearings and legislative sessions? What's driving your progress? Does anyone want to tackle that one?
I can jump in to start. I'm sure everybody will have good advice. So, you know, I think it depends. First of all, it depends on what the action is you're trying to get done. What is the decision you're trying to get made? If it's to get a bill passed, then it's really all fronts. You know, having those one-to-one calls with the legislator, with staffers, getting the grassroots support to send stuff in. Social media goes a long way. It can be really huge in drawing attention. If anyone was following SB 54 and AB 1080, the plastic bills that we were trying to get through, or I should say the reduced plastic pollution bills that we were trying to get through, there was a huge, huge amount of outpour around those bills on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, everywhere, as well as, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls to offices. They unfortunately did not quite get through. It was a rough legislative session, as everybody knows, but it was, we got so much farther because of all that pressure. If it's something at a state agency or a city council, then, I mean, the same things apply, but you have to get to know your targets and what they respond to. If it's constituent pressure, if it's public pressure, you know, and go those routes.
Yeah, great counsel, Jen. Thanks. Anyone else want to tackle that one? I think there's a similar question. Maybe we can move on to that from Mason, who's with one of our CORP's future members, HIP Camp, if you don't know who they are. Have you found tactics especially helpful in virtual advocacy via Zoom? How do you not only overcome Zoom fatigue, but make the Zoom call a value add? Can you make it fun or exciting?
I can kick that one off. Something that we've heard from staff members is that Zoom fatigue is very real. I think, as we all know, in our day-to-day lives, even outside of advocacy. So any way that you can make that dynamic, whether that is a virtual tour of a project that you're hoping to highlight, or an impact that you're hoping to move the needle on, something that just shakes things up, so that can be, so, you know, video is your friend. So virtual tours, interviews of constituents or people impacted by the issue, you know, folks recreating on a trail, showcasing the increase in trail use, I think will be a really impactful way in showing the benefits of the outdoor industry economy. So those are two pretty simple. It requires a little bit of planning, but it's really a simple way to make your meeting stand out from other meetings throughout their day.
Nice points, Brittany. Anyone else?
I can add to that. I'm a Zoom hater and can't wait. I could burn Zoom when this is all over. It drives me nuts. But I do think there's some really big benefits to Zoom. And one of them is that I've tried for so many years to recruit people to town hall meetings, but they're in small places, or you don't have a lot of people there. And one thing Zoom does is it democratizes the town hall meeting. You know, you can, if you have a computer, which not everyone does, but if you have a computer, you can go to these, or you can call in. And we did one recently with Congressman Huffman that Jen was on, which was great. And we were able to bring a bunch of recreation voices together and let Californians join and ask Congressman Huffman questions and ask these great panelist questions about California climate issues, recreation issues, public land issues. And in that case, it's great to be able to bring folks together. And in general, in digital stuff, I think it's helpful to engage the audience as much as possible. So if you have polls and chats, and there can really be more natural back and forth that makes it feel more like in person, then that can be really helpful.
Yeah, I'll just add, that town hall was great with Jared Huffman. I was really pleased to be part of that. And one of the upsides of the digital situation is that people who maybe can't travel because of expense and distance to where the thing is now can just do it from their homes. And we have seen a lot more public participation that way. And I really love what you said, Brittany, too, about having different visual additions. And I would say that the ability to make high quality, engaging, short videos about the thing you're trying to do is huge right now, because everyone's seeing this kind of thing. But if you can bring in a video to show that illustrates what you're doing, I mean, that's a brilliant idea. And we have been doing a lot more of that. We have a pretty high video output at Surfrider anyway, but definitely that's been something that we've been doing with our like solo beach cleanups and things like that. And so you can really tell those stories in a way that's different and engaging. And if you're reaching out to legislative staff or city staff, I would just ask them too before you set up a call, like, do you want to be on Zoom? Like, I'd love to see you and make that connection, but I'm totally down to just do a phone call as well, because they might be so appreciative and just be like, thank you for not making me be on Zoom. And then you just have a phone conversation with them, but maybe they want to be on Zoom and do that too. But there's nothing wrong with asking, and I think it shows that you're being thoughtful. Hope that helps.
Good points, Jen. And as we head toward the wrap up, I just wanted to say that we're in the outdoor industry. A lot of us have amazingly photogenic things to shoot video of, or of action imagery that's in the climbing world. And certainly Access Fund has done a great job of getting people fired up and excited through the use of imagery. And we have a great opportunity for that. Imagine all the other industries that are, stuck in a lab or in some indoor space that's not as exciting. But just to sort of wrap up, imagine, we have one of the beauties of virtual is a lot of people can attend. We have close to 100 people. What would be your call to action as we wrap this up in the last couple minutes here? Anyone can go first.
Power in numbers. We've really found it's all about coalition building and raising, making your voice be loud is going to be so much more impactful if you can increase the number of voices who are a part of that collective. We could not have done anything for Prop 68 in the Sierra without the literally hundreds of partners throughout the region who participated in those campaign efforts. And so I would just say, if you are either focusing on a campaign yourself or looking to make an impact in an issue that you see in your community or in the country, figure out who else is working on that and bring yourselves together.
So be part of a coalition or build a coalition.
Great advice. I would say, and I imagine most of the people who are participating in this are doing it already, but I would say, find an effective nonprofit organization doing work that you care about, become a member if you can afford it, take at least one action that they have. Everybody's got action pages, right? So find the organization, become a member or otherwise support them, and take the action and then share it and see if you can get other people to do it as well.
Good point. Great point, Jen.
And I just wanted to add to Jen, it is to bring your ideas. Don't be afraid to bring your ideas to these organizations, because that is really how we are often able to advance an issue, is that someone from the public brings us their idea of how to outreach, and we're like, wow, light bulb, we'll do that. So don't be afraid to get involved in that way.
Thanks, Teresa. Tania, any last words of advice?
I guess my last word of advice is to say, know what moves people. So know what is going to move your target, and then know what's going to move your audience that you need to reach out to your target. Like, who are you talking to and what do they care about? empathy is a really underutilized tool in all kinds of communication, digital and in person. And I would also second Jen, sign up for really great organizations that do work that you care about. Outdoor Alliance, our sign up is right on our homepage, and would encourage you to sign up for that if you want to hear more about what we're doing.
Great segue, and I'll just wrap it up, and we'll head into the next time, or at the top of the hour, we'll be hearing from Doug Houston at Houston Magnani. But thanks to all of you, Tania and Brittany and Teresa and Jen, for your wisdom and insight into this topic of virtual advocacy. Those of you who want to follow them, you can follow certainly CORP at California Outdoor, at American Whitewater, at Outdoor Alliance, at Surfrider, and at Sierra, is that an underscore business council, Sierra Business Council. And so thank you all for your presence. Thanks to all you attendees. Next up, we're going to hear from Doug Houston. Like I said, he's going to review the 2020 state level legislation that CORP has supported and what's happening this legislative session. So stay tuned, and I'll turn it back over to you, Lexi and Katie.